Welcome to TNN's daily headline and prophecy news with your host and angel of truth, Joan of Arc. Joan will be sharing truth-filled, hard-hitting factual news on a daily basis covering the topics of health, financial, geopolitical issues, and more. So please join Joan as she covers the news in these prophetic times. And remember, the truth shall set you free. We also want to introduce you to our friends at Divine Source Solutions, your divine source for health, prosperity and spiritual growth. They are a diverse group of believers, pastors, doctors, social workers, teachers, public servants, business owners, parents, Native American tribal leaders and more. United by their shared faith in a loving God. Whether you are dealing with health issues, lost a job, losing a home, food scarcity concerns or struggling to prosper financially, they will partner with you to create a workable solution based on your current situation. They share our belief here at Trinity News Network, that there are no governmental or political solutions to the problems we are facing in this fallen world. So their health and prosperity care ministries were created to coach you with spiritually and professionally based real-life solutions to stay healthy and prosper in these difficult times. You may choose to achieve this through a combination of attending their self-paced 52-week video blog Bible study series, online sermons through Fire and Grace Church, free health coaching and weight management guidance, prayer assistance, additional daily headline and prophecy news and more. You can reach out to them at www.divinesourcesolutions.org. We are also proud of our friends at the Support Local Foundation and their humanitarian efforts in restoring health and prosperity, one community at a time. Their local featured small business owners are offering simple local solutions to complex problems in a community near you. So check them out at www.supportlocalfoundation.org. So here's your host and angel of truth, Joan of Arc.
Hello, this is Joan of Arc, your host and angel of truth with Trinity News Network, where the truth shall set you free. Welcome and thanks for joining me on this Monday, January 2nd, 2023. So, let's get started on the latest with foreign policy in the news. Tucker gets it, Putin doesn't want American missiles on his border. Quoting Tucker's own words, getting Ukraine to join NATO was the key to inciting war with Russia. We didn't get it at the time, but now it's obvious. Vladimir Putin invaded Ukraine because he didn't want Ukraine to join NATO. Putin certainly had other motives as well. People always do, but that's the main reason Russia invaded. The Russians don't want American missiles on their border. They don't want a hostile government next door. Now that is true, whether you are allowed to say it aloud in public or not. It has been true for a long time. A lot has been written about this over many years by serious people. No one who knows anything and is honest will tell you Putin invaded Ukraine simply because he is evil. Putin may be evil, he certainly seems to be, but he also has strategic motives for doing that, whether you agree with those motives or not. That is irrelevant. Those are the facts. Tucker Carlson is right about Ukraine. NATO membership for Ukraine was clearly a provocation aimed at luring Russia into an invasion. And it worked too. Putin could not take the risk of having a hostile government next door, or American missiles on his border, so he acted to preempt those threats by sending the tanks across the border on February 24, 2021. Where Carlson is a little off base is when he says that Putin's actions were prompted by strategic motives. That's not really wrong, it just misses the point. The point is that Washington's combat troops and missile sites on Russia's western border would pose a grave threat to Russia's national security. Putin would have to be out of his mind to allow a development like that. So, he did what any American president would have done if he had been in the same situation. He invaded. To quote an excerpt from an article at the World Socialist website, the narrative in the media, which presents the invasion as an unprovoked action, is a fabrication that conceals the aggressive actions by the NATO powers, in particular the United States, and its puppets in the Ukrainian government. In Europe and Asia, the US pursued a strategy aimed at encircling and subjugating Russia. Directly violating its earlier promises that the Soviet bureaucracy and Russian oligarchy were delusional enough to believe, NATO has expanded to include almost all major countries in Eastern Europe, apart from Ukraine and Belarus. In 2014, the US orchestrated a far-right coup in Kiev that overthrew a pro-Russian government that had opposed Ukrainian membership in NATO. In 2018, the US officially adopted a strategy of preparing for great power conflict with Russia and China. In 2019, it unilaterally withdrew from the INF Treaty, which banned the deployment of intermediate-range nuclear missiles. Preparations for war with Russia and the arming of Ukraine were at the center of the Democrats' first attempt to impeach Donald Trump in 2019. For Russia, Ukraine's membership in NATO was the reddest of red lines. Since the end of World War II, NATO had expanded from 12 to 30 countries, almost all of which pushed further eastward towards Russia's western border. We at Trinity News Network are against all aggressive acts of war and are proponents for peace, love and prosperity. Therefore, it's time for all governments to throttle back on escalating war with billions of dollars of military aid and weapons to Ukraine, resulting in more death and destruction. This, along with worldwide financial sanctions that are contributing to high energy costs, food scarcity, and potential nuclear conflict. It's time to end this war. So, let's get started on the latest with health policy in the news. Australian Senator takes hard stand against COVID jabs. The Canadian Independent featured an early December 2022 parliamentary speech by Gerard Rennick, Senator for Queensland, Australia and a member of the Liberal National Party. As noted by Rennick, Australia had logged more than 10 million COVID-19 cases by September 2022, at which point the Australian Health Department stopped counting. A decision made out of embarrassment, Rennick suggests, seeing how more than half the country caught COVID despite the fact that 20 million out of Australia's total population of 26 million got their COVID jabs. Rennick goes on to highlight the rising excess death rate. In 2021, Australia had 8,706 extra deaths above norm, even though New South Wales remained in lockdown for 3 whole months. In theory, the deaths should have been lower, like they were in 2020, Rennick says. Then there are the jab injuries, which according to Rennick now number around 140,000, more than all the injuries reported from vaccines since 1971. Yet despite this shocking discrepancy, the Australian Therapeutic Goods Administration, TGA, just as the Food and Drug Administration and Centers for Disease Control and Prevention in the US, refuses to look at or even acknowledge the signal. We now have data showing that not only do the shots not prevent infection or transmission, but they have negative effectiveness. Their effectiveness rapidly wanes, and after 90 days, both Moderna's and Pfizer's shots make you more susceptible to COVID. In fact, Danish data revealed Omicron cases among the jabbed rose dramatically after 3 months for both injections, giving Pfizer a negative effectiveness of 76.5% at 90 days post-jab and Moderna a 39.3% negative effectiveness. If political representatives truly cared about the people they supposedly serve, there would be scores of them speaking out and taking a stand against the COVID shots the way Rennick is doing in Australia. At present, U.S. Senator Ron Johnson, Republican Wisconsin, stands out as a lone warrior and advocate for the COVID jab injured in the U.S. that said, in mid-December 2022, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis petitioned the Florida Supreme Court for a grand jury investigation of crimes and wrongdoing committed in relation to the COVID-19 jabs, so there's hope for justice yet. According to the governor's press release, the pharmaceutical industry and the FDA have refused to release patient-level data for independent researchers. Meanwhile, the COVID-19 vaccines continue to be marketed as safe and effective, even though the vaccines do not prevent transmission and adverse events have been minimized and disregarded. At today's roundtable, the governor and health experts discussed data covering serious adverse events. These risks include coagulation disorders, acute cardiac injuries, Bell's palsy, encephalitis, appendicitis and shingles. DeSantis is also implementing autopsy surveillance of post-jab sudden deaths, and has established an independent public health integrity committee to assess federal health guidance, to ensure that Florida's public health policies are tailored for Florida's communities and priorities. As noted by Florida Surgeon General Dr. Joseph Ladapo, healthcare professionals should always communicate the risks of a medical intervention to their patients in a manner that is clinically appropriate and meets standards of ethical practice. President Biden and Big Pharma have completely prevented that from happening. It is wrong. With these new actions, we will shed light on the forces that have obscured truthful communication about the COVID-19 vaccines. In response, Governor DeSantis has filed a petition to impanel a statewide grand jury to investigate crimes and wrongs in Florida related to the COVID-19 vaccines. We at Trinity News Network are against all forms of forced medical experiments and/or interventions upon humanity, especially when they are not properly vetted or tested and without informed consent. Therefore, we applaud the courage and efforts of politicians like Gerard Rennick, Wisconsin Senator Ron Johnson, Governor DeSantis and others who are actually representing and trying to protect their citizens from potential harm. We pray for the continued supernatural safety and protection of these individuals, their families and all concerned. The mega bubbles have started to burst, and that could mean unprecedented financial chaos is ahead. As reported by Michael Snyder of the Economic Collapse blog, the Federal Reserve giveth, and the Federal Reserve taketh away. In a desperate attempt to help the U.S. economy recover from the horrific economic crisis of 2008 and 2009, the Federal Reserve pushed interest rates all the way to the floor and kept them at or near the floor until 2022. During that same time period, the Fed also created trillions of dollars out of thin air and pumped it into the financial system. All of this new money had to go somewhere, and it created colossal financial bubbles that were unlike anything we had ever seen before. There were a few voices that were warning that all of this foolishness would end very badly, but those voices were mostly drowned out by those that were super happy that asset values were absolutely exploding. The Fed had essentially created the ultimate get-rich-quick scheme, and countless Americans were more than happy to take advantage of it. But in 2022, inflation started to become exceedingly painful, and the Federal Reserve went into panic mode. The flow of free money stopped, and the Federal Reserve began to aggressively hike interest rates. Everyone knew that this sudden change of course by the Fed would crash the housing market, and that is precisely what is happening. In fact, even the Wall Street Journal is now admitting that we are facing a housing slump as severe, by some metrics, as that of 2007 to 2009. The Federal Reserve's interest rate increases have brought on a housing slump as severe, by some metrics, as that of 2007 to 2009, inflicting pain on prospective buyers, homeowners, builders and other industries linked to real estate. For the Fed, this is a feature, not a bug. Slumping housing could help deliver the lower economic activity and inflation that the Fed wants in the coming year. Home sales have been falling month after month, and it is being projected that they could soon fall below the levels that we witnessed during the last housing crash. Sales of existing homes fell in November for a record 10th straight month. Economists at Fannie Mae and Goldman Sachs forecast they will drop below 4 million in 2023, lower than during the 2006-11 housing bust. Last Wednesday, we got some more bad news. Pending home sales are one of the best leading indicators for where the housing market is going next, and at this point pending home sales have dropped to the lowest level ever recorded. Contracts to buy U.S. previously owned homes fell far more than expected in November, diving for a sixth straight month in the latest indication of the hefty toll the Federal Reserve's interest rate hikes are taking on the housing market as the central bank seeks to curb inflation. The National Association of Realtors, NAR, said on Wednesday its pending home sales index, based on signed contracts, fell 4% to 73.9 last month from October's downwardly revised 77.0. November's was the lowest reading, aside from the short-lived drop in the early months of the pandemic, since NAR launched the index in 2001. With interest rates so high, very few people want to buy homes right now. So home prices are going to have to come down. A lot. In fact, George Gammon has demonstrated that we will need a crash in housing prices even larger than we witnessed during the last housing crash just to get back to the long-term trend line. Do you think that our system will be able to handle a housing crash of that magnitude? Of course not. Meanwhile, the absurd cryptocurrency bubble that was created by the Fed's easy money policies has already imploded. Wolf Richter described what we have been witnessing over the past year in one of his most recent articles. His article stated, "And then come the copycats, since anyone can issue a cryptocurrency. Suddenly there were a dozen of them, and then there were 100 of them, then 1,000, and suddenly 10,000 cryptos, and now there are over 22,000 cryptos, and everyone and their dog is creating them, and trading them, and lending them, and using them as collateral, and all kinds of businesses sprang up around this scheme. Crypto miners, crypto exchanges, crypto lending platforms, and some of them went public via IPO or via merger with a SPAC. And the market capitalization of these cryptos reached $3 trillion, trillion with a T, about a year ago, and then when the Fed started raising its interest rates and started doing QT, the whole thing just blows up. Companies go like poof, and the money is gone, and whatever is left is stuck in bankruptcy courts globally, possibly for years. Cryptos themselves have imploded, many have gone to essentially zero and have been abandoned for dead. The granddaddy, Bitcoin, has plunged by something like 73% from the peak. The whole crypto market is also down about 73%. More than $2 trillion of crypto wealth has already been wiped out. Less than $1 trillion is left. But the party was fun while it lasted, right? Sadly, all of the bubbles are starting to burst, and 2023 is going to be a really painful year. Normally, major economic downturns take just about everyone by surprise. But this time around, almost everyone can feel that really bad times are coming. Here is what Mark Zandi of Moody's Analytics recently had to say about this. Usually recessions sneak up on us. CEOs never talk about recessions, said Zandi. Now it seems CEOs are falling over themselves to say we're falling into a recession. Every person on TV says recession. Every economist says recession. I've never seen anything like it. He is right. We've never seen anything like this before, and that is because the coming crisis is going to be really bad. Many among the elite can sense that what is approaching will be truly nightmarish, and so they have been feverishly preparing for the worst. Though a recent poll found that 4 in 10 Americans believe we are living in the end of times, it's not just the everyman who is fearing the apocalypse these days. Billionaires have been prepping themselves for the apocalypse with elaborate doomsday bunkers for years. As the world still reels from the scars of the COVID-19 pandemic, climate change-driven storms lash American coastlines and flood inland cities, and Russian President Vladimir Putin continues to talk of using nuclear weapons to devastate Ukraine. A Pew Research Center survey of more than US 10,000 adults found that 39% called these the end times. The world's wealthiest are among those cautious of a coming calamity, including billionaire PayPal founder Peter Thiel and Silicon Valley entrepreneur Sam Altman, who have famously laid down roots in remote New Zealand with the express purpose of riding out the end of days. Yes, things will soon get really crazy as global events spiral completely out of control. But that doesn't mean that you should curl up into a fetal position and throw a pity party for yourself. When I was growing up, I was told that when the going gets tough, the tough get going. So get prepared for some really rough years ahead. The clock is ticking, and just about everything that can be shaken will be shaken in 2023 and beyond. Here is some biblical, God-given wisdom to share from myself and the Trinity News Network in these uncertain times, and comes from Proverbs chapter 3, verses 5 and 6. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him and he will make your paths straight. God bless you and stay strong. So, let's get started on the latest with natural health in the news. The cost of cigarettes and nicotine-laced alternatives are brutal to your health and wallet, but there is a natural escape plan. As reported in the Natural News blog by Herbal Remedy Insider, smoking cigarettes or vaping can cost you an arm and a leg, and put your health in the gutter fast. Most health advocates won't go near nicotine, But there are plenty of closet smokers who don't tell anyone about their habit. And there are now tens of millions of Americans vaping free-based nicotine, and they too want out. From depression and anxiety to sickness and insolvency, smokers and people stuck vaping are completely addicted to nicotine, but only because they don't know anything else that makes them feel that way, or relieves them from the free-based nicotine hangover, also known as nicotine spiking. Meanwhile, they spend thousands of dollars, not hundreds, each year, with no plan to quit, or at least not one that has decent chances of working. Here's how that story goes. The average US retail price of cigarettes hovers around $7 a pack. When you factor in the most expensive states, like New York and Connecticut, that charge a whopping $10.50 per pack. If you smoke a pack a day, that's over $200 per month, and over $2,600 per year. 2 packs a day, on average, costs nearly $5,000 per year. Over a lifetime, that could easily add up to $250,000 wasted, and that's just the money spent on cigarettes. Added costs of smoking include extra laundry and/or dry cleaning bills, teeth whiteners, extra dentistry, more sicknesses and time missed at work, air fresheners, lighters, plus the cost of failed quit methods, like patch, gum, lozenges, prescription medications. You may or may not know this, but quitting smoking or vaping and choosing nicotine alternatives that still contain nicotine, for the most part, is a scam. Big Pharma works directly with Big Tobacco to keep you addicted to nicotine and buying their nicotine-laced products, knowing how hard it is to quit if you're still using nicotine. It's like telling an alcoholic who drinks whiskey all day that they can quit if they just switch to beer, because it has less alcohol. Go figure. Check out these costs for nicotine alternatives, and then compare them to natural remedies that offer better results for less money and less time. Let's do a quick nicotine replacement therapy cost analysis, shall we? Nicotine gum contains between 2 mg and 4 mg of nicotine, at an average cost per box, $59.99 for 100 pieces, with a recommended use of 1 to 6 weeks, taking 1 piece every 1 to 2 hours for an average number of 70 pieces chewed per week. Average cost per week, $42. First 6 weeks cost, $252. Then weeks 7 to 9 a recommended use of 1 piece every 2 to 4 hours for an average number of pieces chewed per week of 49 for an average cost per week of $30. Weeks 7 to 9 cost, $90. Weeks 10 to 12 recommended use, 1 piece every 4 to 8 hours. Average number of pieces chewed per week, 28. Average cost per week, $17. Weeks 10 to 12 cost, $51. Total cost to quit smoking, with only 6% average quit success rate, $393. A nicotine patch contains 7 milligrams, 14 milligrams, or 21 milligrams of nicotine, at an average cost per box, $59.99 for 14 patches. Recommended use, 1 patch per day for 10 weeks, average cost per week, $30. Total cost to quit smoking, with only 9% average quit success rate, $300. Fortunately, there is a natural remedy nicotine escape plan. It's healthy, cost-effective, and provides reliable results. There's a natural way to boost dopamine by consuming the extract from a tropical bean called Mucuna pruriens that assists in recovery of normal dopamine levels in the body when trying to quit vaping, cigarettes, or other so-called nicotine alternative products that are still laced with nicotine, like the patch and the gum. A new functional beverage called Crave Kicker contains a non-addictive, potent extract of mucuna, plus vitamin B12, to help balance the nervous system, while boosting and elevating mood. The best part is that Crave Kicker won't damage your wallet or purse like the patch or gum, and there's no withdrawal or crash, because it's a natural remedy. Crave Kicker contains 0 nicotine. The retail cost for a 12-pack of 2.5-ounce liquid shots, $64. The recommended use is 3 bottles per day for 4 days, then 2 bottles per day for about a week. Total cost to quit smoking, with about 35% average quit success rate, based on recent survey, is $64 to $128. So, there you go. You don't have to feel trapped by nicotine anymore, and you don't have to break the bank to end the addiction. The true physical nicotine addiction is broken in 3 to 4 days, and then it's just behavior modification after that. Get ready for a healthy 2023. Although this natural health alternative seems promising, as with all natural or traditional therapies, we at Trinity News Network recommend that you do your own additional research and make sure you discuss it with a licensed healthcare professional. So, let's get started on the latest with prophecy in the news. We are in end times. Journalist and popular author Michael Snyder says in his new book, "We are in end times." Few Christians would disagree. So, where are we and what are we facing? Snyder explains, "I believe we are living at the very end of a timeline. I believe Jesus is coming back soon. The Bible describes the end times, the time just before Jesus comes back, as the most chaotic in all of human history. In fact, Jesus told us there has never been a time like this before, and there will never be a time like this again. Things are eventually going to get so bad that it is going to be the worst times in all of human history." But Snyder also believes it will be the best time for the people of God. There is no other time in human history that he would have rather lived than right now. God put you here, if you are watching, here for a reason. God put you here with a purpose and a destiny and a job for you to do. If you understand that, you will be really excited about the future, even though things will be chaotic and wild. Jesus said the time just before his return there would be wars and rumors of wars. A couple of years ago, Snyder wrote a previous book and said there is going to be a war with Russia. At the time, nobody was thinking about a war with Russia. People told me, "Michael, you are crazy. Of course, now we have a war with Russia. We are getting dangerously close to a nuclear conflict." Snyder also mentions war with China, war between North and South Korea and war between Iran and Israel that are all boiling up right now, all at the same time. Snyder also brings up starvation and famines talked about in the Bible that also point to end times. Snyder explains, there have been droughts in different areas in the past. We are seeing tremendous droughts affecting agricultural production all over the Northern Hemisphere. Meanwhile, in Ukraine, the breadbasket of the world, we have seen agricultural products restricted because of war with Russia. We have this perfect storm for agricultural production. Meanwhile, we have an energy crisis that is worse than any of us have ever seen. It continues to get worse. The price of natural gas has gone haywire because of this war between Russia and NATO. Now, 2/3 of all fertilizer production have already been shut down in Europe because the price of natural gas, and that is going to affect agricultural production next year. People need to realize that if we could not use fertilizer at all, we could not feed about half the world. Half the world would instantly starve if there was no fertilizer used. So, what we are facing is big-time global food shortages in 2023. It's going to be even worse even beyond that. These things are going to intensify. On the economy, Snyder thinks the Fed will keep raising rates, and the real estate market will tank even further along with the economy. Snyder predicts, "I don't think the so-called pivot is close. I think they are going to keep raising rates for now, and that is really bad news for real estate and for the economy because the economy is already being crushed right now. We are already seeing a massive slowdown all over the economy. I think the Federal Reserve is determined to get inflation down, but eventually they will be forced to pivot sometime in 2023. Snyder also says, basically, we are facing the collapse of everything. We are already seeing mass extinctions all over the globe. One study showed 32,000 species has declined by 69% over the last 50 years. So, we are already seeing mass extinctions, and they are going to accelerate in the years ahead. Natural disasters, wars and rumors of wars, pestilences and all the things we have been talking about are going to combine and create this perfect storm. People will see their lives crumble. Their lives, careers, what they planned for their future, their lives are going to crumble. People are going to plunge into depression and despair, and they are going to see no hope. Society will melt down all around them. and they won't see any hope for the future. If you want hope for the future, you need God. You need the Lord Jesus Christ, not just to get you through what we are facing, but what we have in the end. I read the book, and we win in the end. We get to be with Jesus for all of eternity, and that is a really long time. That is the most important thing beyond physical preparation. In closing, Snyder says, Jesus warned us about all these things in advance so we wouldn't be afraid. We can look forward with courage. Yes, bad things will happen, but it is when times are the darkest the greatest heroes are needed. In the years that are coming, you have the chance to be a light and make a difference. If you wanted to live in biblical times, you are going to have that opportunity. You are going to have a chance to do a tremendous amount of good in this world if you understand what is happening and be prepared in advance if you take advantage of this, that you rise up and be the people God created you to be. We at Trinity News Network share many of the beliefs of Michael Snyder's analysis of these uncertain times that we are living in, and we may very well be entering the times of what Jesus said to his disciples in Matthew chapter 24 of the Bible. Especially what he referred to as the beginning of sorrows. Now is definitely the time to get back to reading the Bible and getting to know God through his Son Jesus Christ. For more information related to Bible study support, getting closer to God, staying healthy, food scarcity solutions and more, visit our friends at www.divinesourcesolutions.org.
Thanks again for tuning in with us at TNN's Daily Headline and Prophecy News with your host and angel of truth, Joan of Arc. Please join Joan every weekday, Monday through Friday, as she continues to cover hard-hitting, truth-filled news topics in these prophetic times. And remember, the truth shall set you free.